All right, Jeremy Miner, welcome to another episode of Closers or Losers. Now, today I am with one of our new account managers, Chad Elliott, who started working with us a few months ago. Chad, what's up, man? How's it going?
You know, just being the old boring guy over
Just
here.
just
How about
being
yourself?
being the boring guy, just chilling. Like I always say, like, oh, just chilling like a villain, trying to stay out of trouble. You get in trouble over there? They're like, oh, I'm sure you're not getting into trouble. I love that kind of stuff. But hey, I wanted to interview you. I like to bring some of our account managers on here who are crushing it, helping a lot of people, a lot of salespeople. Now, you've been here a few months. Give us a little bit of your background here. How long have you like you weren't always in sales? Like, how did this all start?
Yeah, so I actually got my first sales job in pest control, right?
Okay,
And that's where
yeah,
I really and at the time I was like own my own candy company, and then I was like, you know what, I need to get a job to have some capital. So I was like, what job in the world would pay me like what I feel like I'm worth, right? And at the
yeah.
time I was like, I'm not sure what the answer is. Right. So then I
Okay,
end up coming across a pest control company who I started with a
yeah.
couple months later, and that was actually my intro into sales. And I was like, you know what? There's people
Okay.
making this much money. I could do it, right?
Was
So
that was that
that's
door?
actually
Was it door to door?
actually it wasn't. It was more or less like we got warm leads and they would assign them to us and then we drive. So we were driving
Oh.
commission.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. You got one of the easy jobs. My first job was door-to-door home security systems, like security systems where you went door to door. Now it's easy if you have the right skills. Really hard if here's what I always say, Chad. Selling, like the profession of sales, quite literally is the highest paid profession in the world, as long as you
Yeah.
have the right skills. But it
I
is on
found
the
that out.
flip side, it's on the flip side, the hardest profession and lowest paying job in the world if you don't have the right skills. It's all about the skill level and acquiring the skill level because, as you and I both know, none of us were born with advanced questioning skills. Anybody on here, anybody watching me in chat or listening to us on the show, anybody born with advanced questioning skills? Probably not. Anybody born with advanced tonality skills? Probably not. Anybody born out of your mother's womb with advanced objection prevention and objection handling skills? Well, we all know the answer is no. So the myth of, that person's a born salesperson, that's just a myth. Nobody's born with those type of skills. Those are acquired skills. Now let's
Yeah.
go. So you got into pest control. Now, the cool thing about you only been there a couple months, but you have a lot of experience as an account manager. You came over from another sales training company that's also headquartered here in Arizona, a really good company. They've got a big presence online as well, like we do. I respect the company you came from. I respect pretty much every company, right? Because there's 8 billion people on planet Earth. Seventh level is not
Yeah.
going to be able to train every single one of them. So we have to share in this responsibility. But in your mind, like what caused you to go from that company over to seventh level?
The main reason was really I just wanted to increase my skills level, right?
Okay.
Like everybody tells you what to say, but they
Yeah.
don't really teach you what to ask, or more importantly, how to even ask it. And so,
Okay.
like, my mission was like, I want to help sales professionals that were just being told what to say and
Okay.
not what to ask. So that way we could really change the way sales people are perceived, which is the old pushy, just do this, do that. And so, like, that was one of my biggest reasons for coming over here is like, I finally found something that would help me
Yeah.
work with human behavior, not against it, which I
Yeah, there
was
could
doing for.
could be trouble if you're using techniques that work against human behavior. Now, I don't know the whole story. I know we've met several times. We talked. You're here in the Scottsdale office location here that we have as well. But how did you find out about us? Did you like start following me somewhere and you're like, who the hell is that dude? Like, I don't know the whole story. What happened?
Yeah, great question. I was actually selling insurance at the time, and
Okay.
I was a part of an organization that's local as well.
Okay.
And I went on a role play because I wasn't sure which team I'm on. And insurance, you get put in teams, right? You,
Okay.
you have an upline and things,
Yeah.
especially if the insurance people watching, right? And so like I was into a role play, and the person who was actually doing the role play, which Caden Sanchez, so a lot of you good
Oh,
viewers out there probably know
one
who
of
that.
our top clients. That dude
Yeah,
makes a lot of money as a
yeah,
life insurance salesperson. Now, you're welcome, Caden, if you're hearing that. Okay, go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, so he we role played a little bit. He's like, "Oh, hold on. Where did you learn how to sell like that?" And I was like, "Oh, at the time I was training with a different sales training company." And
Yeah.
then he introduced me to NEPQ and the methodology, and then
Really?
I
Okay.
fell in love with it ever since
Okay.
then. So
So that's when you started. So, okay, so this is all coming together. So you were selling life insurance and then you got hired with this other sales training company. Now, I could see kind of a conflict of interest. Not that I don't respect
sure.
that company, but we probably have two very different methodologies, different ways of thinking about sales and that stuff. From what I understand, I don't want to judge a book by its cover, but from what I've seen on the outside, what happened when you went over there? Because you're selling like a different type of sales training compared to what you were learning. What was going on in your mind?
Uh, it was conflicting for sure. And what I noticed was like, we were taught to sell with enthusiasm, right? And like a lot of the times, what that would do is we get hung up on all the time. We wouldn't be able to get our prospects to open up and engage with us. And
Yeah.
so, like, I was like, I mean, I got to stick with what I know works, which was NEPQ. Like, I cannot
Okay.
go, too much information sometimes is too bad for people, right? Like, because they
Yeah,
don't know.
too much information, right? It's and Chad does not mean that you when you get on a conversation, you talk like a little timid little
Yeah,
boy, like you don't know anything, you're really boring. That's not what he means. He still means like you're still assertive, but
yeah,
you're more collective, you're more put together, you're more relaxed, you're more like an expert talks, right? We don't want to be like an enthusiastic salesperson. Now, you want to be excited about what you sell, but keep it to yourself because, as you know, when you cold call like you were or calling leads, the more excited you were, especially in the beginning before you built trust, the more, well, sales resistance you probably noticed you got.
100%. Yeah, it was a struggle. So, that didn't work out so well. So obviously you do what works. And, it's always like, it doesn't matter what you tell someone, right?
Yeah.
It's what they tell themselves.
Yeah.
And so like, how do you, right? You got to ask the right questions, right? At the
Yeah.
right time with the right tonality.
Yeah.
So,
It's so true because, and we'll talk about it because I want to break down because you're talking with, we train 161 different industries. A lot of you listening or watching, you might not realize, because I didn't even realize this a couple years ago. Like quite literally, I went to Google like 2 years ago and I'm like, because we were training all these industries, I'm like, how many industries are we in? How many are we not in? Like I just wanted to know. And I typed in, how many industries are there in the world? And I get this Forbes article that says like 100 and it was like 158 or 159 at the time. And I'm like, there's only 158, 159 industries. And as you read it, there's only 150, well, 2 years ago, 159. Every year they come out with new rankings because some industries like go away or they get grouped with other industries. So now there's 163 as of 2023, I think. 2024, we'll wait here a year to see what that is. But there's subsets of each one, right? And we're in all those. So like home improvement's a big one for us. That's like the fifth or sixth largest industry we train. But home improvement, it could mean bathroom repair. It could mean putting in, safer showers for mom when she's older and elderly so she doesn't fall. It could mean cabinet repair, makeovers. It could mean, countertops, tile, decking, awnings, sheds, siding, doors, windows. I mean, there's all carpeting, there's all these different subcategories of each industry. And in these industries, when you're talking with salespeople, let's talk about some of the things that they tell you that they're struggling with. Like if you talk with different industries every day, different salespeople, you talk to companies as well. You're talking to sales managers, VP of sales, chief sales officers. Like let's talk about like the top five things that you hear day in and day out from individual salespeople and companies that they're just struggling with. You want to talk about that? I want to talk to you. I think it's good to know everybody watching us and listening, like what other salespeople in other industries are struggling with, so you can identify that with that, but then you can do what? You can actually do something about changing it, right? Because as Chad, we always say here, the biggest problem in sales is the problem that you don't know you have. Let me repeat that. The biggest problem in sales is the problem you don't know you have, because if you don't know you have a problem, you don't know how to even start to change that. So let's talk about it. I'm going to write these down on the board. So if they're watching us on YouTube, and I would suggest, if you guys are listening to the show on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to the show, obviously you can always listen to it here, but you can always go to our YouTube channel. I think it's just my name, Jeremy Lee Minor, and you can subscribe there and actually watch, because a lot of times when we go over some of the stuff, I might even show you some body language stuff that you'll probably want to see that you just won't be able to see if you're listening in. So, Chad, let's talk about the top 5 things you're noticing salespeople and companies are struggling with, even in the last 6 months to a year.
Yeah, sure. So I think the first one would be what questions to ask your prospects, right?
Okay.
How to
Yeah.
keep the conversation going, right? That's a big problem that we run into, is because a lot of salespeople get hung up on like what do I ask them next, right? So I would say the number one thing is like, what question do I ask next? The second one is, how do I even ask the question?
Okay, perfect. Let's talk about this first one first. I think this is really good. Okay, so the first one
Mhm.
is what are the right questions? Okay.
Right.
And the thing that a lot of salespeople don't realize is,
Hmm.
and I think you know this, is they might have really good questions, but just because they have good questions, it doesn't mean the prospect is just going to automatically open up to you and just spill the beans, right? Because question number, the thing number two, we're going to talk about your tonality. A lot of prospects know what you're doing. So if you're like, hey, can you tell me your biggest problems you're having? They're Unless they're a lay down, most of them are gonna be like, oh my gosh, you have no idea the problems, and it's so bad and so horrible, because they know where that question leads. So we have to relanguage the question where it's almost counterintuitive, right? So let's go back to the industry that you were just talking about that you used to be in before you got into sales training, and let's say life insurance. So instead of me, saying like, oh, what are some problems you're having with the coverage you have now? Or what are some issues you're seeing if you don't have anything? And they know those type of questions, what they lead to. I might push back, and after I find out, let's say I found out from my situation questions that they've already got a $150,000 work policy. So I know that if I don't help them like reframe that way of thinking, that might come back at the end where they're like, well, I've got the policy. I'm good. That's what they have in their mind. So I might say, so now this is not the first question I'd ask, but connection questions, situation questions, then I'm in my problem areas. Where am I going to build the gap? So I might lean and be like, so, I mean, you've got this $150,000 work policy. I mean, what's caused you to feel like that's not going to be enough though?
Hmm.
See, now it's almost like a counterintuitive question where I'm like almost pushing them back a little bit. But because of my verbal pausing that I just did there, how I slowed down, getting them to internalize that question rather than saying it fast, and because of my tone, I'm seeding what? Maybe some
Yeah.
doubt. Some doubt that what they have might not be good enough. But I don't say that because if I did, they'd get defensive. My tonality implies that by how I'm asking kind of in a skeptical, concerned tone. It's like I'm pushing them back to get them to pull me in and basically tell themselves why that policy coverage is not going to be enough, right? So is that what you're saying? Like the questions they're asking are just kind of too surface level?
Right. Exactly. Surface level questions.
Yeah. So if you watching us here or listening to us, if you notice that a lot of your prospects, when you ask them questions and they're giving you vague, generalized surface level answers, it's usually two things. It's the questions are too surface level. They're too generalized. Like if I'm saying, what are you looking for in a solution? Or can you tell me about your situation? Those questions sound good to you, but they're vague in the prospect's mind. They're too general, and you have no control of where they're going to think about what you're asking. But if I'm more like very specific, okay, then I kind of control their thought process and where we're wanting them to think to scan schedule. If your questions are vague and generalized, don't expect very specific answers. You're going to get surface generalized answers, right? Okay. Second thing. What do you notice in the second thing, Chad, from salespeople and companies you're talking to? What's the second thing they're struggling with right now?
They don't know really how to probe and clarify in the problem awareness to make the gap bigger, right? The problem, sometimes our prospects stay surface level with the right with the questions we ask, but knowing how to probe and clarify to actually make that problem bigger.
Okay. Now, um, why do we want prospects to relive their pain? Why not just ask a surface level questions? They tell us a problem and we just kind of move on to the next surface level questions. Why would we want to have them expand on that problem and probe and get them to like relive the pain of the problem? What does that psychologically do in their mind?
It helps them want to make change. They don't want to go back to where they were, right? So like change is the hardest thing for humans to do. And so
Yeah.
like want them to understand like that pain, like you need to make a change in order to get this result. And you don't want to stay where you're at.
You were 100% right. So, you know, my background is behavioral science in college and human psychology. If you guys just started watching the show, but the two biggest emotional drivers that you'll learn if you study, you know, social dynamics, behavioral science, human psychology, the two biggest emotional drivers that cause a prospect to want to change are are reliving pain of a problem, so reliving pain and the fear of future pain. So if you cannot help a prospect relive pain of the problems they're experiencing and or have a fear of future pain, they, like Chad said, they don't feel any need to change. And when they don't feel any need to change, that's exactly why you get objections. That's exactly why they say, I want to think it over, or do more research, or talk to my spouse, or keep looking around. Or if you sell B2B, you know, I need to keep I need to, you know, talk to my department head more. We're not ready till next quarter. They keep pushing it down because you're not helping them relive the pain by knowing what clarifying questions to ask and how to probe to get them to emotionally open up, right? All right, that's a good one, Chad. All right, number three, what's the third biggest thing that you're noticing salespeople and companies are coming to you and they're struggling with?
A lot of them are still winging it. They don't have any structure in place.
Okay, what do you mean by that? Describe to us what you mean.
I say structure is like where are you taking your prospects? We're not just having a conversation, we're having a very highly skilled conversation. And we
Right.
need to, like what you said, is build that gap in their mind from where they are to where they want to be. But how do we do that if we're just winging it? And how do we duplicate that if we're just winging it? Right. So a lot of them, they just don't know how to take them through a process or and have that structure to be able to do those things.
Okay, so what you're saying is they might have a few questions on a script and then they just kind of wing it. So like some weeks they make more sales, then the next week they're down. It's like they're up, they're down, they're up, they're down. We call that personality selling, right? Where you use your charisma to sell. But the problem is because you're personality selling, your emotions are always up and down. So one week you're feeling great, everything's good, your emotions are up, you sell more. The next week something happened, girlfriend or boyfriend broke up with you, your emotions go down because you sell on charisma. Your sales are affected. You're like up and down and up and down, and that's why so many salespeople like do decent. Let's say if they're selling cars, but then they go sell like cybersecurity and they can't sell at all, or they go from cybersecurity to sell insurance, they can't figure it out, or they were good at decent at insurance and now they go sell as a real estate agent and they can't get any listings. So they don't understand a structure. So companies always ask us like, hey, how are you able to duplicate in every industry? Well, it's because of the sales structure. It's because of the NEPQ sales structure, right? So when we go into a company or an individual salesperson, any industry, here's the formula. We find out what are the problems the prospects have. So when you talk to prospects, what are their problems? Now, once we figure out what the problems prospects have, because there's never been a product or service or anything ever invented that doesn't solve a problem and or an emotional need. Even a $50,000 purse solves an emotional need, right? Higher status. They want people to see that they're successful, right? They've arrived. Everything, there's never been anything invented that doesn't do those two things. Okay. So once we find out what the problems and or emotional needs are, then we find out what the consequences are to the prospect if those problems or emotional needs don't get solved. So what are the problems? What are the consequences of those problems? And then how does the solution of that industry or company or product or service solve those problems. Okay. Once we understand that, it's easy to write, connection questions for it, situation questions, problem awareness to build the gap, solution awareness to see what the future looks like once the problems are solved, consequence questions to get them to, defend themselves on why they feel they need to change now, how to write your presentations, how to get them to commit to take the next step and purchase what you're offering. So if you're winging it every day, you're just going to be up and down. Whereas our clients that are probably selling what you guys are watching and listening, they have a structure. So their numbers are like this. They're not up and down and up and down. They're like this, like a
Mhm.
steady curve. All right, what else are you saying? What's the fourth thing? This is good.
I think you kind of already hit on it a little bit, but it would be building that gap, right? From where they are to where they want to be, right? And like if we got to understand the problem, we got to understand how deep the problem is, right? And then we got to figure out like what would happen if that problem is solved, right? And that would be building that gap within our
Yeah.
prospects. And most of them don't know how to do that.
Yeah. No, it's so true because building the gap is not just the questions you ask, but like you said earlier, Chad, it's how you ask the questions. Now, when we say it's how you ask the questions, it's your tonality. Okay. Now, everybody has probably read a sales book somewhere because, there's always like three or four things in common in every sales book I've ever read. It always says sales is a numbers game. ABCs of closing, usually. You got to be a problem solver. Okay, but if they don't buy, you're not really solving problems. So problem solving happens after they buy. That's my mind. And then number four, it always says 93% of communication is your nonverbal and verbal skills, like your tonality in your body language. But then nobody trains you what that means. Like, what type of tone do I have for certain questions? How do I use my body language at certain parts of the sales process, even if they can't see me? Because your body language affects your what? Your tone, your tonality. So, building the gap is really the questions you're asking, but probably more importantly is the tonality that you're asking them, right? Now, when you started learning tonality from NAPQ, what started changing with your prospects that you're talking to?
I got deeper like answers to the questions that I was asking. It was I was always getting surface level answers, right? And
Yeah.
as soon as I was able to understand, like if I want to draw someone in, I would use a curious tone, right? Like if I really want them to get engaged, I would use verbal pausing. Like
Yeah.
the tonality changes the result of the answer that you're going to get. So if
Yeah.
you're not
Because
getting the yeah,
it causes them to think deeper about the question you're asking. So, there's five tones. There's other tones you really have to learn, but the five main tones that you have to master if you want to become a top 1% salesperson in any industry is a curious tone. Okay, walk me through. What do you guys do to generate new leads and clients, just so I understand? Let's say if I'm selling for a marketing agency, that's a curious tone, right? A confused tone. So let's say a lot of people are like, Jeremy, you can't sound confused. You got to show them you're an expert. I totally agree with you. I'm not saying you go through your presentation, you're like, I don't know how it works. Can I get like that? That is not what I mean. But there's certain contexts, as you know, Chad, that if you use a confused tone, it causes the prospect's brain to say, oh, he didn't understand what I meant by that. I need to explain that better. I need to clarify that better. And it causes them to go deeper with the answer. So you know as well as I do, like if let's say if a prospect says, oh, I'm just this situation has just been stressful. Hold on, how do you mean by stressful? See, that's a confused tone. So what instantly happens in their subconscious, they don't even know. Their subconscious part of their mind says, he didn't understand what I meant by stressful. I need to clarify and go deeper on that. And that's when they're like, oh yes, oh my gosh. And their emotions come out. But if I didn't use a confused tone there, if I'm like, how do you mean by stressful? Well, it's just it sucks sometimes. You're going to get a surface level answer. But the confused tone causes them, they can't help it. This is the great thing about the brain to go deeper and clarify. You like that one? Then we've got the challenging tone. Well, what happens if
Mhm.
this doesn't change though? Okay, now I'm not going to use a challenging tone in the first 2 minutes, but later
Yes.
on, after I'm building a gap, and then I have more of a playful tone. Well, how you doing today, Jeremy? Oh, just hanging out, trying to stay out of trouble. What about you? You get in trouble over there? See, that's a playful tone. It's a disarming technique, right? Okay, what number five? What's the grand finale? Fifth biggest thing you see salespeople and companies struggle with right now.
How to actually get your clients to commit. And then
Mm,
at the end of your sales presentation, why they actually want to commit, why they want to move.
expand on that. I think this is a really good subject.
Yeah. So, like, when you say, like, hey, do you feel like this is the answer for you? And then they're like, yes, I do. Well, why though? Why do you feel like it could be?
Why do you feel like it is? I mean, why look at, let's say if we're talking about sales training, why look at getting, sales training now? Like, why not push it down the road like average
Mhm.
salespeople do? Like, I don't want to be average. I want to make more sales. It could be anything, it could be, let's say if I'm, selling solar, big industry for us as well. Okay, but why look at going solar now? Like, why not, you know, push it down the road and keep being forced to pay the rate hikes like a lot of homeowners do who don't know anything about solar. Well, the reason why I don't want to keep doing that is, see, and I'm repeating back something negative that they don't want. If I'm selling business consulting to help companies scale, okay, but why look at doing this now? Like, why not push it down the road like unsuccessful companies do? Well, they don't want to be unsuccessful. That's what they're like, well, no, we don't want to see, we're like pushing back to get them to pull back
Yep.
in. Okay. All right. Chad, hey, this was a great conversation, Chad. Congratulations on being here. I could tell the first day you walked in that you're a leader and that you're an asset and you're going to really grow in the company. So thanks for being on the show. I'm going to have you on the show more. Now, you guys, if you're having any of these problems, so if you feel like, hey, I'm not 100% sure the questions I've been taught for my industry are the right ones, or not 100% sure if I know really how to get my prospects to emotionally open up and tell me the truth of their problems and how the problems are affecting them. I'm not 100% sure. I'm good, but I'm not 100% sure I'm there yet. Or I'm not 100% sure I have the right structure. Maybe I can add more. Or I'm not 100% sure I'm the greatest at building the gap. Maybe I can improve some. Maybe even if I improve 20%, I could make 20% more sales this year. Or I'm not 100% sure I know and mastered tonality. I'm not 100% sure that I know how to disarm the prospect where they let their guard down simply by using my tone. And I'm not 100% sure that I know how to get my prospects to close themselves. So if you're not 100% positive or 100% satisfied with the sales results you're getting now as either a company or an individual, and let's say that you know that there's different levels to this ball game, as Chad has started to learn, and you want to play at a higher level, you're welcome to. First step, you can join one of our free Facebook groups. We'll give you some free nibbles in there. Go to salesrevolution.pro, salesrevolution.pro. It's a free group. There's like 110, 112,000 salespeople and companies in there. Lots of good people in there. And then you're welcome to get one of our books. It's a Wall Street Journal bestseller, The New Model of Selling, barnesandnoble.com. You go to your local Barnes and Noble store or go to barnesandnoble.com to buy the book. Now, Chad, as you know, does a book cause you to triple your sales?
Gives you good information, but no, the answer is no. You need to actually learn and how to apply it.
Yeah, because I can teach. First of all, I can't teach everything in a book. And number two, these are just words. There's no tonality. There's no body language. How do you read? How do you learn advanced tonality in a book? You can't.
You know,
How do you learn advanced body language in a book? You can't. Those are skills you have to watch. You have to watch and you have to learn and know how to make it industry specific. But this is a good start. I did put some tactical information here that will help you make some sales, more sales than you are now. But if you want to like double, triple, quadruple what you're doing, message us in our Facebook group and you can always meet with one of our account managers down the road if you want to look at different training options for your industry. Chad, you're a legend. We're glad to have you on the team, man.
all right, I appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody. We will see you on the next episode. Talk to you soon. Thanks, Chad.